But welcome to tonight's BullCharts user group webinar for all of our BullCharts users anywhere around the country or even overseas. This discussion topic occurred to me a few weeks ago and I thought this would be interesting to talk about because I think it's a conundrum that many traders and investors face, maybe from time to time or maybe every week or whatever. So I've got some slides to help, as I often do, to compartmentalize and break up the thoughts and the discussions. So if I work through these slides, it'll help with raising key issues, key questions, maybe some contentious topics. So for the discussion tonight, I've thought about some possible options where we can have a look for strong performer. Turn my spotlight on, strong performer. How to measure share price strength. Is it simply a percentage of share price gain over a period of time? And if so, which period? That's a difficult one to answer. What about chart indicators? Which one? And what if the stock is overbought and due for a retracement? How can we tell? So here are some of the options that I've come up with, and this is not going to be a finite, definitive list. There are likely to be a number of other ways to do this, but some of the possible options to determine share price strength and compare the performance of one stock to another. With that in mind, here are some considerations, some options. One way is to draw a trend line on the price chart and measure the slope of the trend line. And BullCharts has several tips, tools in it that we can use to help measure the slope of a trend line. We could use a moving average, but then how do we work out when we compare two stocks, which one is the better performer using a moving average? And that's one we can talk about. The relative strength comparison indicator is usually drawn against an index, but we can draw it to compare the relative strength of two stocks. And we're going to have a look at that one tonight. Then there's the BullCharts Comparative Percent Performance chart, which many people, it was only introduced 3, 4, 5 years ago. And many people are perhaps still unaware that this particular type of chart is available in BullCharts and how to find it. The Allen Hull Raw indicator, rate of annual return, is one that can be used, but should we look at daily charts or weekly? And that's something we can talk about. So here's some BullCharts tools. As I said, we can draw a trend line on the chart and measure the slope, because the steeper the slope, the stronger the performance. But we've got to be careful that a strongly performing stock over time might be getting overbought and due for a retracement. So we've got to be careful. But even so, there are these 4 tools, and I've got a sample of each one of them that we can have a look at. And most of you are probably very well familiar with most or all of these. One of the options in BullCharts with this sample daily chart of Commonwealth Bank, and all of these candles look like they're black ones, but that's just because I've squashed the chart up. Some of them are actually white. So the tooltip information, when we draw a straight line on the chart like this one and position it so that it's a true uptrend line, we can hover the mouse cursor over the line and this tooltip pops up unless we've got tooltips turned off. Now, maybe what I should do at this point is go across to my BullCharts and show you what I mean by that. Let's turn my highlighter off. Turn the highlighter off. Normal. Here's BullCharts, and we were looking at Commonwealth Bank. And I'm using a brand new monitor here tonight. If it's worse or better than the last one I'd used for a couple of years and you've noticed, let me know. I'm curious. I think it's working all right. So if we draw a straight line and position it accurately as a trend line, and that's pretty close, we can hover the mouse cursor and the trend line properties pop up. And hopefully you can read in that tooltip box that the trend line properties show start and end date, number of bars included is 61 over that period, calendar days is 85, the change is 16.106, now that's dollars, $16.10.6. The percentage change is 16.75%. The gradient, 0.264 per bar. Annualized, the percentage change is 94.55, an angle 17.4. Some of those numbers might be academic, but if we had two charts side by side, and just to show that we can do that, let's put another one up of maybe Westpac and tile these two charts. Westpac went X recently. Wrong key. We put a trend line here. Now this is probably a different period, but by way of example, hover here and it says the change, have a look there, the percent change is 9.95% or an annual change of 67.7. Now if we adjusted these two charts so that they're the same period, that's one way to show us the slope, how strong the share price is changing, assuming that that trend line is an accurate reflection of the share price increase over time. So back to my chart, my presentation. BullCharts tooltip info. That's the other thing I was going to show you. Under tools and preferences, there is an option here to show chart tooltips when moving mouse over it. I often have that turned off. So when that is off, the tooltip never appears on my chart. And one reason I do that is because sometimes I might have a text box on the chart which is full of a whole lot of text. And if I've got tooltips turned on, then what happens is a very annoying, it's turned off, so I'll turn it back on. When I hover over it, a very annoying big tooltip appears on the screen. And if it's wide text in a big text box, it's very distracting. Hence, I often turn that off. But there it is, Tools, Preferences, and Show Chart Tooltips. While we're here, this other option, Advanced Tooltip, was introduced recently. And that's what some of you saw in an updated version of BullCharts a few months ago. This set of information price data in the top left corner of the screen. And if I had something like a guppy moving average, guppy multiple moving average on the chart, then it might display a whole lot of extra text, price data across the chart. If I had multiple indicators, there were many lines of stuff. And this got to be very distracting. The little caret there collapses it so that you can still see that upside down caret, that V. But inside Tools Preferences, this extra option was introduced so that we can turn off the Advanced Tooltip. That turns that off. Any questions about any of that? Anybody missed that? Dun, 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 dun. That's a little bit about BullCharts. Yeah, was
Robert, David here.
Yes, David.
Is there any way that you've been able to calculate the slope of that line? Is there any way that you can put that into a scan, or there's nothing there that says, well, I've got two stocks, one that's going at 14% and one's going at, say, 16. this over the same period. Is there any way that you can put that into a scan or not?
I think those sorts
You
of
can take it on board.
No, I think those numbers are derived data, calculated from the available price information, and therefore I think you'd need to use some script. Make sense?
I'm not sure Des is the expert, but possibly using linear regression, you might get a set of figures to compare. I don't know.
Yeah, if you really wanted something like percentage change or annualized change, then of course, as we know, that's based on the difference in price over a number of bars. And I'm thinking in script, that'd be fairly straightforward to calculate in script in a scan. And then what you do in the scan is search for all of the stocks with given criteria and show that value and sort the resulting table by that value. That's what I'm thinking. Shall we move on? Good question, David. Thanks for that. The trend ruler is a tool that I think many of you are familiar with. If we have a look at, say, Westpac, we can put the trend ruler. It's in this tools toolbar. I can draw the trend ruler from here to here. Now my trend ruler snaps to the price data. It snaps to the closing price. If you don't want to do that, you can untick that, turn it off. I like to have mine on. And you can see here that this is telling us that over the 48 bars, the price was up 9.86%. How does that compare with this 49 bars and percent change 9.95? Very similar, but then there are slightly different locations there. And if you hover the mouse over the trend ruler, then that information box, the tooltip pops up as well. So the trend ruler is one way to measure the performance of a stock. Then there's the BullCharts range information. Now the range information is simply this shaded rectangle, and it's available over, I can never remember which one of these toolbar buttons it's hiding behind. There it is, range info. Click at the start and the finish, and that tells us open for that period, the open, the high, the low, the close, the average price over that period, the number of bars, calendar days, the change in value, $2.05, the percent change, the volume, total volume over the period, the number of up bars and down bars. So the range information gives us that information. Some of it's similar to the other, some a little bit different. How does that compare with what we saw on the CBA chart? Let's go back here, delete the GMMA, and put the range info on here. It says percent change 16%. Is that what we saw with the other thing? 16.75 on the trend line. Yep, very close, thank goodness. So the range information is one way to have a look at the actual change in values. The linear regression, Phil mentioned that a minute ago. The linear regression is a tool that's also available. And it is not there. I can never remember where these are. I don't use them enough. Fibonacci, Gann. Oh, there it is. Linear regression. We click. The linear. Now remember that the linear regression gives us, and we can drag the start and end points of this across the chart. And the way it's automatically operating is it shows, it runs through the middle of the price data over the period, and it automatically adjusts as we drag it. So we could put a linear regression on. Because it's showing the average price, I guess 50% of values are above and 50% below. I'm not sure if that's an accurate way to describe it. But if we hover the mouse cursor on the regression line, again, it tells us the gradient, 0.30. How does that compare with this? Gradient 0.264 per bar. Different sort of number. But there's a way to measure the strength, performance of a share price. Moving averages. Now, we might think that moving averages are one way to also compare the performance of a stock. It took me a while to work this one out. We can plot a moving average. Let's just do EMA 20 on here, and I'll make it red. Down here, make it red. And also put one, get rid of these other things, and get rid of the ex-dividend details, and put a moving average on this one, same period, EMA 20. Now, at a glance, you might think, now how do we work out some way to compare the performance of these? One thing we can do is put a line, a straight line on here that roughly approximates to the moving average, or touches it, or whatever, and the same over here. And then use the tooltip to see what that's telling us. And wherever you put the that line is fairly subjective. Or maybe we change the moving average to be more than 20. But if we wanted to use moving average, that's one way we could use moving average. I don't know if there are others. There could be. Is anyone aware of any variations of that we could use with moving average? No?
What I've understood, the 20 EMA that you've put on there is what they refer to as the mean. It seems to be the mean average of what it's supposed to be doing.
What do you mean average?
When there was a mean reversal, it
Yeah.
always seems to come back to the 20.
Ah.
20.
Okay. We look at a longer period, maybe it does. Swings backwards and forwards around it. Okay, thanks, Kevin.
Rate of change.
Which one, Phil?
Could you use rate of change over the same 20 bars over the same for the two? Compare, I don't know.
I'm not sure. Is it called ROC or rate of change? Maybe it's ROC. No, not there. SROC. Is that the one, Phil? Or CROC? Smoothed index rate of change.
Just simple rate of change of the close price today compared with the close price 20 bars ago as a percentage, and so that you're on the same playing field. I don't know. Not CROC. I think it is just rate of change, price rate of change.
Price rate of change. Price rate of change compares the difference between the current price and the price of a specified previous period. Yes, there you go. In percent, 14 periods. Do the same over here. Does that help us? Maybe it does. It's interesting that there's a zero line drawn here. And for CBA from early November onwards, the price rate of change has been above zero. Westpac is similar since late November.
It's interesting that they're both indicators are in the price around the 20 EMA, and that zero line on the PROC when the price goes below the 20 EMA, it goes below the 0 line as well.
Yeah. The other observation that I've got here is that with CBA, the PROC has peaked twice, mid-November, mid-December, but Westpac peaked only once. Does that tell us anything about the relative performance of the two? Not sure. Yeah, maybe that's one to think about. We looked at moving average. And the one thing I didn't do was put the trend ruler on the moving average. Of course, for that to work here, I've got to turn off snap to data. Don't forget, with this trend ruler, you can snap to an open or a close by holding down the mouse left button and clicking on a letter on the keyboard. C for close, O for open. So to lock in here on the open, all I've got to do is tap O. It'll snap to the open. Maybe here to the close, close. But what we really want is to put it on the moving average. So that's from 7 November to 22 January. Got to do apples and apples. Where's 7 November? On the moving average. Turn off snap to data. Snap it to the moving average. Moving average. 13% for CommBank and 8% for Westpac. If that's useful, I don't know. There's another way to measure price performance and compare two stocks. The relative strength comparison indicator. So what this chart on this slide shows is Commonwealth Bank's share price. The blue line is the RSC, the relative strength comparison indicator, comparing CBA to Westpac. Now, note that the RSC is calculated by dividing one share price by the other. For example, at 19 January, the last candle on the chart here, CBA was 113.28. There's the tag on the price axis. Westpac happened to be 23.20. I got that off another chart. Dividing the two gives us 4.883, which is the value there of the RSC on that day, 4.883. And the info window confirms that. RSC 4.883 comparing to WBC. So how do we do that? Let's just have a look at this chart of CommBank. I'll delete everything, Control and delete all, including the indicator. And what we're going to do is insert relative strength comparison, not the RSI, relative strength comparison divides the closing price of a security being examined by the closing price of an index. We don't have to do that. In here, we can put a security, WB, get a code right. Next, insert on the price scale, overlay without scale, display new scale on left. And there we get a chart that looks much like what I've got in this slide. And you can see that the value of this was 4.883 on the 19th. It's a case of display the info window, which is here. And on the 19th, 4.883. It's got that there. Now, exactly how do we interpret this? I'm not sure. So the relative strength comparison is one share price divided by the other. If they were both performing equally, I think we would expect the value of this to be the same, a straight line, a horizontal line, I think. Could be wrong. But we can see a big change here in November. Apart from saying that, I'm not sure how to interpret the RSC when comparing two stocks.
Can you compare it to an index, Robert, like the XJO or something? Comparing the share price to the how the XJO is or not?
Yeah, that by default, that's what the RSC is for. I'll just change that color to red. So that's the XJO compared. Because the calculation of RSC is one share price divided by the other, that implies that Commonwealth Bank is actually 4.883 times the Westpac price. So by looking at this, I think what we're saying is that at this point, Commonwealth Bank is 4.889 times Westpac. Back here, it's 4.819. Down here, it's 4.5 times the Westpac share price. So I'm thinking that the higher it goes, the more it's worth compared to Westpac. So if it's moving higher, I think that means that it's getting better, stronger compared to Westpac. And here with the red line, that's the XJO, and CBA compared to the XJO, 0.015. Up here it's 0.015 still. Must be a rounding error, 0.014. Significant decimal places. So that's raising the point that we could use the RSC, relative strength comparison indicator, to compare the strength of two. We might need some more research in order to really understand how that works. Here's the one that I mentioned earlier, many users might not be aware of, the comparative percent performance. Go back to my BullCharts and let's again delete everything off this chart. Delete all. Yeah, got to tick the box. All. Now, if we want to have a look at the percent performance of one stock compared to another, there's a button up here on this toolbar, comparative percent performance, and I don't think it's anywhere else on the menus or anything. You've got to use this button, comparative percent performance. So on the CBA chart, what we're going to do is with a start date of 2/1, let's make that 2023. Let's include the sector index, and we could put up Westpac Bank and NAB and ANZ. Use commas to separate them, no spaces, and click OK. So the vertical axis changes to be percentage. And I nominated that, I nominated 1st of January 2023. I should know that 2024 maybe. So this faint line, I can make it thicker, make it easier to see. That's where the 4 stocks are all zeroed to be 0%. From there, you can see the candles, that's the original CBA price. This purple line is ANZ. This dotted line is the XFJ, the sector index. This other line here is Westpac. And that other one that's following CBA must be, it's NAB. And NAB is very closely following CBA in terms of percentage performance, which might be of interest to some people. But note that from 15 November, this purple one, ANZ, dropped and has underperformed all of the banks. So this comparative, this comparative percent performance compares one stock with any number of others. What we could have done was put in all of the sectors, all 11 of them, and compared all the sectors to each other. Note that we cannot put any text. You can't use the text tool or any of these other tools or straight line or anything on this chart. If you want to know which stock is which, then you need to be fairly clever about how you color them. I could right click, for instance, on NAB up here and wait for my computer to catch up. My Windows is getting old and clogged. I've right clicked on this NAB entry up in the pane title. I'm just waiting for the drop down menu. Here it comes, NAB daily line properties, color, make that red and maybe thicker. And the same, maybe also Westpac. Change that one to be something different. Color, what's a good color? Maybe blue. And line style, maybe dotted and thicker. Make it easier to stand out. And then you can relate these colors up here in the pane title bar, relate them to the colors on the chart and hover the mouse over it to see which one's which. Of course, one trick or trap with using this is choosing the start period from which to set the zero. Because if we change that, even just a few weeks, notice how these come closer together at this point in time on this chart. If we move it further back, notice how CBA has outperformed all of the banks and the XFJ over that period. So depending on what you're analysing or what you're looking at, you can get very different results here based on comparative performance, percentage performance. So that's the comparative percent performance chart. Momentum indicator. On the slide here, I've got Commonwealth Bank and Westpac over the same period in time, November, December to mid-January, and the momentum indicator at the bottom. Does the momentum indicator tell us if one is performing better than the other? I'm not sure over that period in time. Maybe we should be looking at specific values at a point in time for momentum, and not trying to look at the chart over time. Okie dokie. Next one, Allen Hull raw indicator. Now this raw is hat raw. If you've not seen raw, you need to realize that there are two different raws. One Allen has set up for traders and one for investors. So the investor one is have raw. On this one here it says hat. That's the trader's raw. And for many stocks and over many weeks, the value of raw is often zero. And CBA is one reasonable example, I guess, where it's come above zero only for a few weeks, 3 times in 2020 and 2021, and later in 2021. If we put that on the chart, let's close that chart and create a new one. CBA. Take off some of the stuff we don't want. Maximize the price and put at raw, Allen Act Trade raw. The raw cutoff is 80 by default. That means if raw calculates to less than 80, show it as 0. ignore it if it's less than 80. And there are two values for liquidity, a starting liquidity and an ongoing. I'm not sure how they're factored in. Click on Next, display a new pane, that's normal. And this indicator is best viewed on a weekly chart according to Alan Hull. Would you like to change to weekly chart now? So yes, let's do that. And there you can see that raw is 0, except for the 3 periods that I showed on the slide. And if we have a look at Westpac, it's 0 as well, except for a short period of time in 2020, 2021. So the raw indicator is another possible indicator that we could use to try to get to quantify price performance. But my view is that it's not very useful, because Westpac was trending over a period of time here and not showing up down on the raw. Now, if we change raw so that the price value is maybe 10, does that change? Not the horizontal value, parameters. Does that change things? I don't know. Well, there you go, it does change things. So maybe raw is something that we could use. And being an indicator, it should be available in the scans so that we can search for when the raw is greater than 10 or 20 at a particular point in time, and select it, put it on the scan results list. Go back to Commonwealth Bank. That's been up and down too. So maybe it's useful if we do change the cutoff value. And the final slide I've got here is asking the question, with all of the things we've looked at, are any of them better on a daily chart or a weekly chart? Or does it tend not to matter, except for raw, where Alan Hull suggests it should be weekly? Are there any views on that one?
With personally, I like the weekly chart to get a good feel of the direction, the vibe of what the stock is particularly doing. Dailies, yeah, there's too much noise in the daily to get a feel of which way it's going.
Yep. Yes, Kevin, and sometimes the candles even show us too much detail. I guess the conclusion really is that there are a number of ways that we could measure share price performance over a period of time. Choose the period. When does it start and finish? And therefore compare to the strength of two stocks, the price performance of two stocks. Does that help us with any of our trading or investing strategies? Not sure. If we narrow our window down to the last 2 or 3 weeks, then maybe it is useful. Some people like looking at price over time and looking for past periods of support and resistance on the chart. But if we don't look at support and resistance, one thing we might look at is the recent price performance, which might be only a few weeks. So there's a few thought starters, discussion starters. Any questions before we wrap that up and turn it off? No, that's okay. Was that useful?
Robert, David here.
Yes, David.
I also wonder if you can't visually, if you say put the Commonwealth Bank back up, and visually looked at it either as a line chart or say 20 coloured 20 EMA, just using colour. Because BullCharts is very good at colour. You know, sometimes you've got to step back and look at it from a bit of a distance, and that's probably one of the things I use mostly is looking at it and trying to assess whether it's it's uptrending or not. And, sometimes visually to make a distinction between CUA or Westpac, not that easy, but I'd probably use the trend rule if I was wanting to.
Okay. For some people, I don't know how many, it's not an issue because if both stocks are trending, then maybe they've got enough money available to buy both.
Yeah.
So it's not really an issue, and it's not something to worry about.
Yeah. It might be an issue if you had to decide between, say, NAB and Westpac or ANZ and Westpac. I don't know. Maybe you've got enough money for two stocks, two bank stocks.
Yeah. I'm guessing that that does become a problem for those starting out in the game and who don't have deep pockets. Then this might become an issue. Yeah, then it's a challenge. Okie dokie.
There's always a danger that the horse has already bolted. The outperformer will retrace sooner, I don't know.
Yes, and Phil, as you say, that one that comes to mind is an American US stock that I was watching recently. Anybody know offhand the code for NVIDIA?
NVDA. US dot NVDA.
I looked at it back here, where it was last year up around $400, $450, and I thought, is this going anywhere? And I thought, maybe it's not. So I let it go. Then I took my eye off it. Now it's $596.
Nearly 600, yeah. Yep.
Yeah, so it's gone up another 48% in 13 weeks.
That's right. It's one of the top stocks. So
Yes.
AMD is another one, US.AMD. Not as much as NVIDIA, but still had a good rise. And in the same area, AI.
Yes. Yeah, the only question with watching any of those is, are they about to do something different? It's hard to know.
Robert, here's a general question on US stocks.
Yeah.
Is it possible to scan for rising US stocks or in the database or not?
That's a good question.
Yes, it is. I do that. I scan US stocks.
Kevin,
how do you do it, Kevin? You just look for the best price stocks of the day, or so what database?
It's in-the-day data, but they're in the list there. You got the 500. You get all the US stuff. The NASDAQ, New York. Well, US is a big one, a big folder, but I get through the data downloader, get the New York Stock Exchange, the NASDAQ, 500. So you can look at those groups. Filter them out if you want to look for something that's trending.
Yeah, I've tried and I can't get it to do it, but maybe I've got to go back and have a think. Maybe I've got too many criteria looking for rather than just simple price up.
Yeah, there's no fundamental data. It's just the 5 price action data that you get the US stuff.
So we could scan over any of these lists here, global indices, S&P 500, or we could scan over any of these databases. I'm assuming that any of these will work. Scan, close, show, close, run.
Yeah, right. So you therefore can sort that's closed five period or higher than the 5 periods ago or whatever, yeah, or a percentage.
But David,
Yeah,
I
right.
noticed down the bottom left corner, it says found 473 from 480 stocks.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
in the scan, did I not choose the really big database? Securities, 3,500 securities selected.
Yeah.
I only found 480. So some of these it's not searching across. Yeah. But in principle, David, does that answer your question? You can search,
Yeah, it
scan
does.
across some
I
of
could
them.
have a play. I'll have a play round.
Yeah. Okay.
It obviously does it. Yeah.
Good question. Yeah, but as Kevin said, no fundamental data.
Yeah.
Wonder what information is in the database about it, apart from price, data, and volume. I've never explored that. Okay. 9 o'clock. Oh, there's my BullScan manager. Let's redock it. Cancel. Dock it against the right side. There we go. Share trading game. Registration starts 8 February with play running from 7th of March. If anyone's interested. Some of the stocks that we were watching last week. These ones that, and what we should do is apply the default template. So A2B, some of you might have seen it was trending nicely until late December. Then it jumped up here, then went ex-dividend and fell miles. Don't know why. I didn't look at that. So these 4 stocks listed here on the right have gone ex-div or are about to. Origin Energy went ex on the 12th. Did it move much? I've been watching, as I've said before, I've been watching stocks go ex-div and their share price performance before and after for a couple of years now, and notice very interesting share price performance, very unpredictable. Premier went ex 9th of January. Virgin Money UK. It's going ex on the 22nd of Feb. Goodness knows what's going to happen between now and then. Stocks that I've found that I think are trending. Cochlear has been trending through November, December, maybe not recently. Elders, trending, still trending, basically from early October. Helia Group, which was new into the index in late December. That's been running nicely for anyone buying Helia, up around 29% or more. Collins Foods, been trending. Net Wealth Group, trending. Medibank Private. A lot of the stocks I've noticed recently been performing poorly. Medibank was doing okay until today. It's fallen 3.7%. ASX, still trending up. 16, 17, 18, 19%. Johns Ling Group, one that David showed us a presentation back a couple of months ago. JB Hi-Fi. one of the things that is a little bit interesting is to have a look at stocks that went X further back in time. Maybe go back to November. It's only a handful. Oh, premier's coming up. Amcor. It went X dividend in here. Did it fall by the amount of the dividend? Don't know. What happened the day after? Something to ponder. Elders. We looked at Elders. It went X back here. New Farm. On the day of the dividend, its open was lower than recent days, and it went up on the day. And then it's rallied. Totally unpredictable, I think. ALS, Grain Corp, went X on the 29th of November. It opened lower, went up. Infratil, all over the shop. Aristocrat Leisure, same. Inside Tech Pivot. Too hard. There are a few of the stocks that I've been watching and we had a look at last week in our meeting. Does anyone have any trades they've made recently they're happy to share with us and tell us whether it worked or didn't and explain the reason why, or a sector you're looking at?
Did one with GMD recently. Gold stock, when gold started to run.
GMD.
It was GMD.
In October, November. Seemed to be going quite good.
Bailed, what's that, early December, when it hit the Jim Berg profit-taking line. And yeah, it rolled over soon after that and has been rolling down ever since.
My machine is calculating. Do I need a new processor? Or memory?
Or both.
I wasn't talking
about the 21st century, but 22nd century.
And get Windows 11.
Yeah, solid state drive and all the U-Buttes.
Yeah, I've got my BullCharts database on a solid state drive, but everything else is still on a good old spinning disk that's now, I don't know, 5 or 6 years old. So there's the Jim Berg volatility profit taker, Kevin. Did you use that as a signal? Oh, this one.
Yeah, exit.
Yeah.
So that that GBPT, yeah, exit the next day.
Yep. And then you watched it recover for a couple of days and you had second thoughts, but then, yeah, went south. Okie dokie. Anyone else? In last week's meeting, as I mentioned earlier, someone mentioned that uranium stocks might be about to take off. Might take a while, weeks or months. I don't know that there's an easy way to watch uranium.
Oh, there is. What's that? There's a website that shows you all the minerals and stuff. Their current price. Uranium's been rocketing for about 3 or 4 months now. Yeah, a number of the uranium stocks are starting to turn back down again. I think they're a bit overbought. But uranium itself still going up.
Okay.
Yeah, they've had a bit of a pullback. Bannerman Resources is one, BMN, and Boston, you can see it's starting to pull back there and have a bit of a come back to trend. But I think that's probably more upside longer term, but that might take a month or two to develop. And I think the other one is Boss Energy, BOE.
And I guess the other consideration here is that even if we think that uranium is about to be flavour of the month or is, it could be weeks or months before all of that pans out, or years.
Yeah, I think there's a worldwide shortage of uranium, and that's the real reason. As Kevin was saying, it's been trending up for some weeks. Yeah, quite strongly. So,
yeah, May, June last year it started to run. It's gone from $56 up to $106.
That's right. It's over $100 per pound.
It's just going straight up at the moment.
Yeah.
Trading economics, you can see that information.
Tradingeconomics.com. About a year ago, we were talking about setting up our own little database of commodity prices. I can't remember which website we looked at to do that. Don't think it was this one. Where's uranium?
I think it was Market Index.
Was it Market Index?
I think it was.
Yeah, Market Index has commodities on it as well.
Yep. Uranium. On a list of companies that somehow deal with uranium. It's quite a lot. Oh, there's two websites, Market Index and tradingeconomics.com. Commodities, uranium. US dollars per pound. From $50 to $100. It's doubled in 9 months.
Yeah, I think they're starting to realise that renewable energy is not going to fit the bill if they're going to try to get their 2050 targets. They need something a little bit more powerful and reliable.
Yes. Try to convince the relevant political parties.
The Greenies.
Yes.
Yes.
And Labor. Let's not get into politics. 9:15. Any other stocks and sectors we're watching or trades we've made?
One stock I'm watching, it's not ready yet, but it's worth watching.
Yep.
A2M.
A2M for Mike.
Yes, A2 Milk.
A2 Milk. Oh yeah, it's been up around $7 a year ago. Big downtrend, and maybe it's bottomed and has turned. Okay.
I think you put Bega Cheese in that category as well, BGA.
BG.
Stock that you need to keep an eye on.
Oh. It's been running for a while.
Just had a golden cross a few days back.
Oh, really? Moving average crossover, moving average cross. Which moving averages? I've got 12 and 26.
250 SMA.
Ah. There you go. Is that going to be a trading signal with some algorithmic traders?
Apparently it's on every institutional trading screen, they tell me.
Is that right? Very interesting.
Robert, can I ask something apart from BullCharts? You might have discussed it, Self-Wealth, that stockbroking arm, I think it is.
Yep.
Has anyone had anything to do with them?
That's a good question.
because they're only $9.99. I think it's Self-Wealth they're called. $9.99 a trade, and they're CHESS sponsored. But
that's a good question, because I've been looking at them too, but I haven't done anything about it.
and it's the money's held with. You've got to open up an ANZ trading account or some account with ANZ, so it's held with the ANZ, and it's CHESS sponsored. But that's as far as I've gotten. I haven't heard of anything untoward.
I do read about self-wealth occasionally in the newspaper or on the news, and it's never anything bad.
Because if the head company falls over, I'm assuming that the shares are held in CHESS, so they're captured there, and then your bank account's held with ANZ, and hopefully ANZ keeps going.
Yeah,
Your money's safe there.
you would hope so, yes.
Yeah.
The guy from Self-Wealth is just embarking on a new set of seminars that they're doing online through YouTube with Jason McIntosh that I spoke about. That he runs his own website called Motion Trader, and he's not sponsoring Self-Wealth. Self-Wealth obviously approached him and asked him to do a series of webinars, which he's doing, and it's so. But they come over as quite reputable, but I really don't know much about them.
Yeah. I think just looking at the safety size, like I said before, you know, the two things that are holding it, even if it falls over, at least your shares and your money's captured in two different ways.
Yep.
Yeah, whenever I look at something like this, or look at doing business or dealing with an organisation, I like to see some real faces and names about who's behind the business. I can't see any for Self-Wealth. Is that a good or bad? I don't know.
Who knows?
But Raph, it sounds like you're doing your homework and the right sort of homework, so that's good.
Yeah. It's just that I buy the Commonwealth Bank, and I'm probably overweight with them, but it's costing a fortune in brokerage.
Yeah.
With ComSec, which it might be cheap. If Self-Wealth falls over, the ComSec amount's cheap.
Yes. Yeah.
It's only a transactional broker. If you're buying and selling, they're not actually holding the shares, and well, your money is usually in the Commonwealth Bank, not ComSec as such. So
Yeah.
they're only handling the transaction.
Yep.
The ASX is holding the actual share certificate in CHESS.
Yep. That's as far as I got, and I'm just trying to put my toe. I might just have a feel, and but I've got to set it up in a super fund. So that's going to be if it's anything to do with the Commonwealth Bank or whatever with my trustee stuff, it's a nightmare. So hopefully it'll be simple with them.
A few years ago, there was one ATA member who shared his story, if you like. He had a lot of money with one broker that he was using, and something went wrong with the broker. I think the broker went belly up, and he lost tens of thousands, might have been $70,000 or $80,000.
Oh dear.
And I think the moral of that story from any of us was do be careful, and maybe don't put all of your eggs in one basket. Maybe feel comfortable about trading with two brokers.
Yes.
Just a thought.
Yeah, I'm with Bell Direct also, and they give you, as far as the cash is concerned, Bell Direct holding your cash in a notational account to trade with, or you can use Macquarie, and they settle through Macquarie. So yes, if you had all your cash in the broker's account and they disappear, well then yes, it's all gone.
Yeah.
Yeah, now that's the case with, I believe, with CMC and IG Markets, both market makers, CFD brokers. But they're multinational and they've been around for a long time. And one could argue that they are unlikely to go bust and lose your money. And they've been around long enough to supposedly be doing things right in terms of handling client funds. But they're not a share broker. Well, I think they are handling shares now, but they're primarily CFD and Forex and commodities.
Yes. Yes. With ComSec, if you're paying more than $15.95 a trade each side, you might want to have a chat to them about getting your fees reduced.
Oh, okay. I've been doing that with a lot of other things. I know I had an interest-bearing deposit with the Commonwealth Bank, and I said I was going to shift it, and they said, "I'll leave it with us," and they matched another. I think it was Defence. I just can't remember, and they matched their rate.
Yeah.
But that all that was a phone call, and now every time I get a bank bill, not a bank bill, they're gone. Term deposit. I try and negotiate with them, but I don't do it through they've got business brokers or something. I don't deal with them. Waste of time. I go straight with the bank itself.
Yeah, right.
To the business area. Yeah.
That's interesting.
Same way, yeah. Everybody's negotiable. Nothing's set in stone. It's definitely worth asking the question, insurances and interest rates, all that sort of stuff.
And while you're thinking, the next Melbourne meeting will be the third Tuesday in Feb, the 20th. So this webinar will be 1 week later. As usual, the fourth Tuesday, the 27th. I'd like to thank you all for your interest and participation. Thank you, everyone. Good night, and we'll finish up.
Thanks, Robert.
Thanks, Robert.
Yep, good show.
Thanks, Robert.
Welcome.
Thank
Good. Thanks, Phil.
Thanks very much, Robert. Thank you.
Good night, all.
Good night.
I'm going to stop sharing. I can